we've had a full show of Vietnam vets today, and it is only right that we have Tom Giorgi back with us. I asked him to come back last time, and he was very generous. He invited me over to his home. He showed me his amazing collection, his man cave, which, Tom, you and I were saying, I don't think I'd ever leave if I had a man cave like that. And he gave me a lot of material, because last time we really talked about the battle that he was a part of on July 3rd, 1966. But, he gave me a lot of material to go into to really understand this battle more, because this is something I think we need to dive into more. So, Tom, it is an honor to have you back with us. Thank you for being part of the show again.
It's a pleasure. Like I told you when you asked me the last time I was here, would I want to come back? And, why would I not want to come back? It's an honor, and thank you for having me. I'm truly honored. I really am.
No, trust me, the honor goes both ways. And, for you to give me all this material, combing through it, it's just amazing. So let's start this way. The morning of July 3rd, 1966, it's 6 a.m. Your commanding officer wakes you guys up, tells you guys to eat. You guys are going out there to search for the enemy. Tell us a little bit about what happened before that to make him wake up with that plan to send you guys out.
Okay, well, I don't know if I said it the last time, but our mission was we were securing a tank trail, which is no more than a dirt road that three-quarter cav, which was the armor unit that was attached to us, was using to move quickly across the area of operation that we were working in, and. To secure a trail, you have to have positions, a certain distance apart, to keep it protected. And our platoon was split up into four-man positions, which are called either listening posts or ambush positions. Listening posts meaning look for enemy activity, report what you see, etc., etc. Ambush positions, if you think you can see somebody and kill them, do so. So that night before, 7 NVA were coming down the trail, spotted by the first position, carrying a bunch of canteens. They didn't know how many of them there were behind them. Being there were only 4 of them, they knew they were outnumbered. There could have been 50, 60, 70, 100 before. This could have been an advanced element. They didn't know, so they were reluctant to open up. They radioed our position, which was the lieutenants. I was in the last position, out of all of our platoon's positions. The lieutenant had both M60 machine guns with him. Nice guy, along with a 90 millimeter recoilless rifle, something that is usually not taken out in the field. It's not an offensive weapon, it's a defensive weapon, but anyway, he had it out there with us that time, so that was in the position also. So he's screaming and yelling, open up, open up, open up. Nobody opened up. They go to the next position, they pass them. He's getting more furious with each position that they pass, so he tells us, get those 60s set up, train them on the crest of the hill. The minute that they come over that hill, we're going to annihilate all of them. We're not happy with it because, like the other positions, well, maybe there's 200 behind these 7. We don't know that. So anyway, they never came. They obviously smelled the trap and veered off. So he's just like, he's livid. He's absolutely livid. So he radios the company commander. They get the entire company together, tanks, armored personnel carriers, and we're out there for like 2 hours in the dark, searching for these 7, which we never found. We go back to our positions, figure out the guard for the rest of the night. I think I had the first hour, went to sleep around 4 o'clock, and then was awakened at 6 in the morning with the news that we thought we were going to have the day off because we were out all night long. We thought, we were just going to hang at that position and just, do nothing. No, not so. He says, we're going out looking for these 7. We're going to get them today. So he got us all at the far end of the trail, assembled the entire platoon together, decided to split the platoon in half to cover more ground. He said, I'm going to take 18 of us and go west, and I'm going to send the other 18 with Sergeant Outlaw, who was a master sergeant, and the ranking NCO under Lieutenant Sturdivant. They're going to go east, and we're going to see what we can find. Being I'm going west, I'm going to take both M60 machine guns with me. Once again, nice guy.
You
take both M60s machine guns with you, and you send the other guys off with no machine guns. So, anyway, that's when we entered the wood line. We found a trail that went south. We followed the trail south. We came to an intersection that went east and west, and we said, let's continue south. We continued south, got to the end of the trail, found some sea rations that showed us that Americans had been there before. And then he says, well, let's go back and take the eastbound trail and see where that leads us. We went back to the intersection, and we went east, and that's when we discovered the enemy base camp, which was deserted, abandoned, etc. And that's we walked in. We started searching it. It was too quiet. You get an eerie feeling. There's no birds chirping. There's not a sound being made. It's just eerily quiet. And that's when everybody said, listen, let's get out of here. It's approaching lunchtime. Let's just go find a nice little safe spot in the shade. We'll open up some sea rats. We'll eat, and then we'll continue this search. After we do that. So we all felt that was a good idea. He said, okay, Giorgi, you're right. I agree with you. Let's go. We started moving out of the camp, and he got us, we were going out in column formation, and we hadn't gone but 5 or 10 steps, and we were in the rear. My machine gun was bringing up the rear, me and Smitty and Colette, and we heard a couple of rounds go off. And we said, uh-oh, contact. We found them. So we're thinking we found the 7 from the night before. Now, the orders we found out later were we weren't supposed to pursue these guys. The commanding officer wanted us to fall back into a defensive position, call for help, because he knew that there was a good possibility, having just gone to a conference on enemy tactics, that what they do, they'll suck you into an ambush while you're trying to fight your way out of the kill zone, which is obviously taking up all of your concentration, because you're being fired on and your guys are dropping. So, hey, we got to get out of this kill zone. And, while you're doing that, the enemy is literally running full speed to surround you. And that's what they do. And then before you know it, now we're taking fire, not only from the ambush, the L-shaped ambush, we're getting it from our rear. We're getting it from all positions. As a matter of fact, when I saw Garcia and I ran to him, this is when I got the Silver Star for running into the kill zone, disregarding my own safety, trying to save him. When I first uncovered his wound, it was in his left upper back in the scapula area. And I'm saying to myself, why is he shot from behind when the enemy is in front of us? And that's where we're pursuing. So that puzzled me. Now, I found out, years later, after, investigations were done, and that when we were at that intersection deciding on which direction to go, the NVA were there. They were hidden, and they were listening to us. They obviously spoke English. They knew exactly what our plans were. So they knew that we were going to go south and find an end of the trail and then come back. That's when they set the L-shaped ambush. They also put snipers in the trees. And that's who got Garcia. He was shot from above. Because the snipers up in the trees, what they're doing is they're looking down and they're watching who's doing the directing. Because their goal is
take out the leaders
first. Once you get the sergeants and the officers killed, now you've just got a bunch of, just regular soldiers with nobody giving orders, and it's just a cluster, what. So that's basically what happened. And, once Garcia was shot, I got the medic to him. And the rest is history, trying to defend that position while reloading the M16. I paused firing for just enough time to give them the opportunity to fire an automatic weapons burst, which killed both him and the medic. And
well, the Silver Star citation is just absolutely incredible. You sent me a photo of it, which you have, again, in that awesome man cave of yours. And it's one of those things where I think it's if you're just a normal person, you can't imagine putting yourself in that scenario. But that's what heroes are made of, and to me, that's what you are. You are an American hero for what you did there, because it's so many people in a situation like that would have not have known what to do, but you stood there in the forefront doing what you could for your comrades, and that's why you are a recipient of that prestigious distinction. But let me ask you this about the enemy you were fighting. You and I were kind of talking about this before we went on the air. I think it's hard sometimes to get into the mind of the enemy, but you lay it out there. The enemy you were fighting had just come back from R&R, rest and relaxation, and this wasn't just your average run-of-the-mill VC enemy. These were hardcore, trained, determined fighters. When did you guys, I mean, I'm sure in the panic of battle, you're just doing everything you can, but did there come a point where you really knew we're fighting pros here? You know, these are NVA, these are not your Viet Cong guerrillas?
Well, first of all, let's just back up a little bit.
Sure.
You said hero. You know, anybody that's got a decoration like a Silver Star or Distinguished Service Cross, you know, we're uncomfortable with that term.
Yes.
Because you know, you don't stop and think, well, I'm going to do something heroic right now. Like I think I explained the last time I was on the show. It's all instinct and training. You know, you just act. You just do. You know, you just do what you think is right. But anyway, that that takes care of that. Now, as far as recognizing who we were up against, we knew that in that area, we called them PAVNs. People's Army of Vietnam. ARVNs were Army of the Vietnam Republic, South Vietnamese.
They're fighting on the American side.
The NVA were NVA regulars, which we called them PAVNs, you know, People's Army of Vietnam. We knew that in the area that we covered, there were practically not many VC. It was mostly PAVNs. So the other thing is, when I first saw an enemy soldier, and they weren't easy to spot because, you know, they didn't stand up and say, hey, here I am, you know. I saw the uniform. So, you know, these guys were uniformed soldiers, well-trained, well-supplied, highly motivated. Now, one thing that people think about when they think about Vietnam, they think, well, you're fighting the Viet Cong. They were a bunch of young kids running around in black-clad pajamas. No, not so. These are very, very highly trained professional soldiers, the NVA. The other thing is the Vietnamese people, they're born into strife. Their whole life, it's always been one thing after another. Before the Americans, it was the French. Before the French, I don't know whether it was the Japanese.
During World War II,
yeah, it just goes back and back and back. They were always fighting somebody. If they weren't fighting a foreign enemy, they're fighting the elements. You know, so this is a civilization that knows nothing but fighting. You know, and when the Americans came along, they said, well, roll their sleeves up. Here we go again. Here's another battle for us to face. So, they were very, very disciplined and very determined. You know, they knew. They say, we're just going to drag this on like we did with the French, and eventually they're going to get tired and go home. And that's pretty much what happened in Vietnam.
You know, it's one of those things where I've read too, and when you think of that time, you think of the U.S. military, the overwhelming technological superiority, and they were smart enough to counter that by thinking, and your story is a great example of that, where if we fight and engage the enemy as close as possible, we're going to deny them their ability to bring in air support because they're not going to risk hitting their own people. So if we fight them close enough, we're going to create so much space, and there's not going to be enough space for them to bring in that stuff. Right. And obviously, when you talk about in your story being surrounded, how close the firefight actually was, I think is that a good assessment of that?
Absolutely. They knew that. That's one thing that they knew, that if they could get close enough to us, it would be very hard for us to use our artillery because we would be risking hitting our own people. And unfortunately, that's what happened that day. I'm sure we lost a lot of people to friendly fire, but that's just the chance you have to take, because if you don't, you're so outnumbered, you're going to be overrun, and you're going to be dead in no time. So, you do this, and it's a hard choice to make, but and they knew that if they could get in close enough to us, grab us by the belt buckle, and just be right next to us, it would be hard for us to do that. So, it was a real tough. Tough thing to navigate and negotiate, but I feel today that I'm alive because of what Sergeant Totten did with his calling in his airstrikes. He was the forward observer that was with us that day, and he was so accurate. He was able to bracket the artillery guns where they would lock up and come in at a certain position. The projectiles would land, and they were not hitting us, but hitting mostly the enemy. So he did such a phenomenal job that day. He literally kept us from being overrun because of his technological superiority.
We're gonna pick up the story because there's so much more good stuff to get to with your story.
Sure.
So we're gonna take a break,
okay,
and then we will bring you right back. Once again, Tom Giorgi is with me, and we've got we could sit here all day talking with him about everything, you name it. But today I want to get back to his story. Tom, we kind of left off with you talking about the actions that led to you being awarded the Silver Star. And shortly after that, when you were defending the position, you got hit.
Right.
Now, I want to read you what you said when you got hit. And I think if we remember from last time, you said you had your 12 gauge pointed right down at an NVA, and then before you knew it,
crawling up on our position. Yes, I saw
you
it.
got hit. And
Right.
This is what you said. My left lower back felt like it was hit by a train, and my entire body burned like hell. And then you go on to talk about how lucky you were where that bullet landed, and if it was so close to hitting the abdominal aorta that if it did, you would have bled out in 30 seconds. If the bullet had hit the spine, you could have been paralyzed. When you read that, it really is a shocker, and you did talk about that last time too, but I mean, bring us back through that moment. I mean, I'm sure the mayhem, when that happened, it happened so quickly. But I mean, do you remember that moment really vividly still?
Oh, it's burned in my memory, Joe. We've all heard the expression, you came within an inch of your life.
Yes.
And it can't be more truer than in my case. And that moment when I was getting ready to squeeze off around on this, and the guys are going, well, shoot him. I was with a couple of Southern guys. I even picked up their accent. It didn't take me long before I was saying taters and y'all and yonder.
Oh, they were
and,
Arkansas boys. I
yeah,
think you said, right?
Arkansas. Yeah, Smitty was from Arkansas. So was Collette, and but yeah, there's a lot of Southerners and a lot of city guys. That's what seemed to wind up in the infantry, but. As soon as I was squeezing the trigger, like I told you, I felt this searing pressure pain in my lower back that I can't describe it. It was literally like a locomotive just drove through my pelvis, and I was on my stomach. I was prone, firing from the prone position. I was shot from my right rear. The bullet entered my right buttock. It went diagonally through the pelvis, between the spine and the abdominal aorta, and I had pain from the hair on my head to my toenails. Now, I was a paramedic for 20 years. Guys said I didn't even feel that I was shot, and that happens lots of times. If a bullet goes through soft tissue and doesn't hit anything, that can happen. But once it hits bone, you know it. And the pressure of a bullet, people don't understand, but it's the force of a round. When you hear one whiz past your ear, you have a good feeling as to just how fast it's traveling. And it's also hot. So when it goes through you with such an amazing amount of pressure. And in my case, it missed the spine by an inch. And this is why I think I felt pain throughout my entire body and not just in the area where I was shot. And once again, the first pain I felt was the exit wound. I never felt it go in. I felt pain weeks later and asked the doctor, when are you going to take the bullet out of my right cheek? And he says, what are you talking about? I said, well, I got a throbbing, isn't the bullet stuck in there? He says, no. He says, that's where it went in. I had no idea. But that's how fast it travels and how much pain and pressure it causes. Is the explosive exit wound is what I felt first. The fact that the bullet was so close to my spinal cord, I think that every nerve in my body felt the heat and the pressure of the bullet, and that's why the pain was throughout my entire body. I mean, Joe, I can't. It's so hard to put into words just how bad that pain hurt. And I've had a kidney stone. I've had a lot of painful things happen to me in my life, but that, I tell you, is that's a real record breaker, boy. I don't think I'll ever experience pain as intense as that was. And once again, lots of guys get shot, don't even know they were. But boy, oh boy, I knew I was hit. And that's the first thing I did is I screamed out. I said, I'm hit, I'm hit. And then I lost all control of myself. I rolled over onto my back, and my arms and legs were it was like I was having a seizure. I couldn't control my arms and legs. Everything was just flailing, uncontrollably. That's when Smitty and Colette, they jumped on me, and they, grabbed my arms and legs and rolled me over onto my stomach. They saw where I was hit. They took my web gear off, my belt, and shoulder straps that had all my equipment on me. Smitty, we didn't have any bandages. Smitty had to cut a hunk of his T-shirt with his bayonet and pack it into the hole in my back, which saved my life, because had he not done that, I would have bled to death. Yeah, he tamponaded the bleeding by just packing it, and Colette was going, it's still bleeding, Smitty. Pack it in harder, pack in more. So that's what they did. They just kept shoving T-shirt in there till it finally stopped bleeding.
Well, and for people who may not remember from last time, who are listening for the first time, to add even more to this, it was in the middle of monsoon season, so it was pouring rain while this. Was it pouring rain the whole time, or was the rain in and out, kind of?
The monsoons, that's what's so crazy about the monsoon season. It's not continuous rain.
Okay.
It'll be 110 degrees and sunny and beautiful, and then 10 minutes later, it's like the heavens open up. Wow. I mean, it used to rain so hard. We used to shower. We'd get a bar of soap, we would take our clothes off, and we would shower in the monsoon rain, because, when you're out in the field, I don't know if I mentioned it last time, I think I might have, I went 28 days once without...
You did mention that last
without
time.
Bathing or changing clothes, and, it gets so you can't stand the way yourself smells, you gag at the smell of yourself, so every opportunity you get, you want to wash yourself, so we would wash in the monsoon rains, but... that was probably a blessing in disguise, because my uniform was soaking wet. I had regular fatigues. I had one jungle fatigue shirt that I wasn't wearing that day. I was sent from Fort Dix, March of '66, to Vietnam. My duffel bag was packed with all uniforms that I was issued in Fort Dix in the wintertime. So I went there with winter clothes. I had regular leather boots. I would go through a stream. They would fill up with water. I went to the supply tent. I said, Sarge, I need jungle boots. He looked down at me, and he says, what's wrong with the ones on your feet? I says, well, they fill up with water. He says, well, when they're no good anymore, you bring them back to me, and I'll direct exchange them. He says, I can't give them to you. I said, I can't get jungle boots? So anyway, I said, all right, I know how this works. I went around the corner. I took my bayonet out. I pried the heel off of the boot. I went back, and I put him back up on it. I said, Sarge, I tripped over a rock, and the heel came off my boot. He says, all right, now I can exchange them for you. Same thing with the jungle shirt. I said, can I get a jungle shirt? I said, these things, they get covered with water, sweat, rain, and it takes forever for them to dry out. The jungle shirts were nice and light. They were very, very, they dried quickly. That's what they were. They were jungle shirts. Pants also. He said, I can't give you one. And I said, why not? He said, because the one on your back is fine. I said, okay, I understand how this works. Went around a corner, ripped the sleeve off. I said, oh, Sarge. I said, my sleeve got caught on a branch, and, the sleeve came off. I got a jungle shirt. But anyway, that day, because I only had one jungle shirt, I had regular fatigues on that day, and they were soaking wet. So when I was in the armored personnel carrier, once it exploded and caught fire, and I had to jump out into the fire, even though my pants dropped down to where the tops of my boots were, the shirt was soaking wet and the rest of the pants were wet. And when I jumped out into the fire, if they were not wet, they would have, flamed up, and my entire body would have sustained more burns. So the monsoons that day were a blessing in disguise.
It's an amazing story, Tom. And I wish we had more time today. But you're going to be back. I mean, I think you're a part of this show moving forward permanently. So next time we're going to dive into this even more. But I think to truly understand this battle, that's what you have to do. You can't just do it one and then understand it. It's a process. You learn a little bit more each time. And we've got you here with us to help guide us through that. Tom, it always means so much. Getting to know you has been amazing. And I really consider it a real honor to have you on this program, so thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Like you just said, we'll learn more about it. It was a 6-hour battle, so we've got a lot to talk about.
We got a lot to talk about, everyone. That's Tom Giorgi. I'm Joe Archino.